to the regular school committee meeting of October 21st. We're live streaming from the middle school library, and we are recording this meeting as well. Due to COVID-related restrictions, we don't have any public in person here tonight. But with us by invitation are Phil McManus, the principal of the middle school, and Paul Worth, who will be on our agenda in a few minutes. And then, of course, our school committee members and administration. I think I sound too loud. Any better? Okay, all right.
You have to ask me if you sound better.
Oh,
I'm
right.
way down here.
Okay.
And you do.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. So today was day 3 of the hybrid learning program, and we welcome the students back into the building with Masco. And I'm looking forward to Dr. Harvey's and Mr. Siemens' school reopening update later in this meeting. One matter that I need to update the committee on tonight is about a call I received last night from Sandy Dearborn, one of the presidents of the teachers union. And she was just calling regarding the upcoming teacher's contract renewal. The current contract ends in June, so it's time to negotiate the next one. As you recall, we just finished negotiating with them for the memo of agreement related to COVID. So, certainly all of the teachers and all of the administration have been pretty busy preparing and executing the hybrid plan. So one thing she was mentioning is that written in that contract is in the year that you renew, both parties need to submit their proposals by October 30th, which is next week. So that is why I was mentioning we've all been pretty busy, and it certainly seems unrealistic at this point to expect either side to be ready for regular negotiations starting next week. And I'm pretty sure the union feels the same way. So we need to discuss what we want to do about that. So things for us to consider is, do we want to do like a quick contract negotiation just for a year and deal with the bigger stuff, or any other stuff, I should say, later? The normal term of a contract is 3 years. So another thing we could do is propose extending that October 30th date to maybe the end of January. So that will give both the teachers and the administration time to put some thought into their proposals. So that's kind of what and we need to reach some sort of agreement with them prior to the 30th. Yeah. So that means we need to figure it out tonight, what you guys would think. The last one?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm kind of doing that in a short one again. Not doing short. Yeah. But I think the extension on the date would be wonderful if they are also looking to have an extension on that for the 3 weeks. Yeah. You guys all hear me?
It's a little hard, but
I'm remembering last time people down there, I feel awkward yelling, but can you hear me okay?
Now I can.
Okay. Joe, you're shaking your head no? I was just suggesting that we're just discussing this. My feeling is I wouldn't want to just do it 1 year. We just coming out of a 2-year. I'd rather have a longer one, in which case I'd like to postpone the October 30th date. If we have the sense that the union would also like to postpone the October 30th deadline.
What's the impact if neither side is ready to give a proposal on October 30th, but there is no agreement as what the extended date is?
An agreement ahead of time.
But,
Right.
I think the concern is that if we say tonight that we would like to extend it, we're not meeting again until after the deadline. If they don't agree to that, then in effect, that's what's going to happen. We're going to miss that deadline. But I think certainly from my standpoint, requesting an extension just makes perfect sense for everyone. I would hope that they would see the wisdom in it as well, in giving both parties time to think about it.
Yeah, I can tell you that, Sandy was definitely flexible. I appreciate that she gave me a call to give us a heads up because I have lost track of time. So, yeah, she just doing something.
Did she communicate an openness to an extension?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'd almost like to extend the current contract. I feel like there might be some negotiation fatigue, and if we're only have a certain amount of resources, both for the teachers and for administration, I really wouldn't want to even consider it, and I don't know if this is even doable, but I wouldn't even want to consider getting into negotiations until this year's over. And by year, I don't just mean 2020, but I mean that the school is flying on a normal, semi-normal, non-emergent.
Post-pandemic?
Somewhat, I don't know when post-pandemic changes to just normalcy, but I feel like everybody's been overextending themselves in this school. And I would like the overextension not to have to include that. If they're, you know what I mean? That's how I'm thinking, but I don't know if they would be up for it, if we would be up for it.
Yeah. Okay. Kristen?
I'm thinking that if we at least approach them with the extension till, say, the end of January, whatever date you want to pick, it would give the negotiations team and the unions team to at least come together to discuss what Tasha's talking about. I think there's a lot of implications for both sides in terms of we don't know what the economy is going to look like. We don't know what next year is going to look like. I don't know if it's as simple as simply extending a contract. I don't know if it's as simple as entering a one-year contract. There's so many different pieces to take into consideration that, as important as negotiation fatigue might be, having some meeting to sort of feel where both sides are is, just however the conversation has to go, but buy us some time to have those conversations, because right now I think it's impossible to contemplate what that would look like for a 3-year contract. I certainly don't know where we would be.
So let me try to summarize what you're suggesting, that we not make a decision or, nail anything down about 1 year versus 3 year, but rather we agree to a date where we meet with them to discuss what we are going to do.
Sort of, yeah. I think for sure we have to postpone beyond the 30th. I just don't know if we want to have it carved in stone that if we postpone on the 30th, we're going to say, okay, we're going to give you a firm proposal, as opposed to saying maybe we need to discuss whether we simply extend the current contract. And I think it gives both sides an opportunity to evaluate it, because I don't think anybody's really, we've all been dwelling in the how do I get to tomorrow, literally tomorrow, and I don't think we can talk about how do we get to next year with anybody. I don't think the union would be prepared to have that conversation in the same way we aren't.
What are my suggestions that evening?
I think an extension would be wise. Trying to get it done before next Friday would be next to impossible on the heels of a really difficult stretch of time.
So an extension, but no decision on.
I actually think Kristen's kind of right, where if we just extend, to the beginning of January for the proposal exchange, we can still get to the decision that a 1-year extension is the right way to go. This might just be too quick to do that.
I would propose the end of January, not the beginning, because that's an absolute budget pressure, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So January 30, end of January for the first meeting.
For that proposal exchange.
Proposal exchange.
Does it have to be a proposal to exchange, or can it just be
That's what
about?
the
That's
contract
what the contract
says.
says, so.
I'm just saying, could it be that we extend that whole thing till next October 30th at that time?
It could be that our proposal is that,
Okay.
or that we, give proposals and then we all kind of, as we get together and say, you know what, a 1 year is probably the best thing, and we just do that. The way the contract lays it out is you're supposed to exchange initial proposals by the end of October and then spend the rest of the year bargaining those proposals. So,
In terms of negotiation fatigue, I think there'll be as much negotiation for a 1 year extension or a three-year contract. The only way that avoids it is, if the 1 year extension is on very favorable terms to them.
So I think for right now, we can just say, let's extend it to January 31st.
That gives us, we obviously, the negotiation team, which we should talk about,
Mhm.
and talk about some of these issues.
Right.
We can have an executive session with the school committee and discuss
Mhm.
what we can do. Along the lines of the negotiation committee, I think we had said that we will volunteer to be on the last committee, that we were gonna ask them to also do the next negotiations for consistency's sake. So that was Bill, Kristen, Tasha, and me. So I think we were all thinking that that's the case. Does anyone else suggest anything? Is that okay?
I can't hear what she said.
Are you good with doing it again?
Sure.
Getting the band back together?
Yeah.
I missed you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Days are so empty.
That could be a sign. Well, I think we owe
Next
a
hit.
call to her by October 30th. I told her I'd get back to her by the end of the week. Yeah, if she's not. And, so that's, although I don't, we need to vote on anything. I'm not really making any decisions. Okay. All right, thank you. That's all I had for my remarks. And then now I'm going to go to item C, comments from the audience. We've yet to figure out a way to get live public comment typed into our meetings. So we're going to follow the procedure we have for the last several meetings, where we ask people to send in an email to be read at this time. And as is the case with when we have in-person comments, the committee won't necessarily respond to these email comments at this meeting. But we may choose to address the topics raised through an agenda item in a later meeting. And you may or may not be happy to hear we just have one letter for tonight. It is from Kelly McVeigh from Boxford. Kelly has an 11th grader at Masco who's decided to stay fully remote. And she has two questions, comments. The first is, with the 7 class per day schedule, was a policy established around the quantity and due dates for homework that teachers can assign each night? With prior fully remote and in-person schedules, students had additional time to complete assignments because classes didn't always meet every day. The homework load has increased so far this week and has been a challenge to balance the sports, extracurricular activities, and much needed sleep due to the earlier start. And then her second comment is, if and when we go back to fully remote, please return to the remote schedule used at the start of the school year. I never thought I would admit it, but the 8:30 a.m. start time was great. The opportunity to meet with teachers and other students during the day was beneficial, and the homework load was much more equitable for them. I remember that Kelly did participate pretty actively in our start time discussions.
Oh, yes.
Before, so I appreciate her
Absolutely.
continuing that, and thank
I just have to remark that it really was interesting to me how many people commented on this list.
I relate to what we just talked about. But anyway, okay, so we'll move on to item D, approve the MOU with the paraprofessional.
So we have it, the hard copy in front of you of the MOU that we negotiated with the Paraprofessionals Association. This really just covers this current school year through the end of June of 2021. I think some of the real major pieces in this. One of the pieces there is the real one that has any kind of financial impact on others and the others besides number 4. Traditionally, our paraprofessionals had only worked from 7:45 to 2:15. That was because of past practice of having a homeroom that was the first 15 minutes of every day, which we don't have anymore. And so we changed their work hours to 7:35 to 2:15 in this agreement. That's 10 minutes, or the equivalent of 50 minutes per week to every one of our paraprofessional schedules. Either way, we kind of looked at trying to shift the hours and everything else. It would be either they'd be walking in late to the first class or leaving the last class early. So we just thought it wasn't good either way. So it's something we actually proposed and they agreed to.
I could just add that adds believe it or not, 10 minutes a day for 40 some odd paraprofessionals over the course of 155 days. Adds approximately $17,000 to our projections. So I'll include that in the updated forecast, but I'll probably give the committee the second meeting of November. That was the only financial.
That's the only one that had a financial impact. Everything else is pretty important to do with working conditions, and a lot of the language actually echoes the language that we used with the teachers' agreement. We did do a moratorium on evaluations. In this case, our paraprofessionals are at-will employees on a 1-year contract, so not having an evaluation is not necessarily as maybe an issue that might be for other positions. It's actually one of the easiest negotiations I think we've ever had since then.
Yeah, they were really great to deal with. It was 2 1-hour meetings and then a 2-hour meeting where we really went through the substance of the 4-page document. And we relied heavily on, as Mike said, the language that we used in parts of the teacher contract and DESE guidelines and staff and student protocols that already had been established, and they were completely in agreement across the board. So they're very easy and great to work with.
Yes, they ratified this on Monday.
Move to approve the MOU with the paraprofessionals.
I second.
Okay, all in favor, raise your hand, please. It's unanimous.
Except for the chair.
Probably should, yes.
So I move to authorize Carolyn Miller, our chair, to represent the committee.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hand. Great, unanimous. Thank you.
I think, Carolyn, that'll come across as an electronic signature, like we did in the entire document, so we'll probably get that tomorrow from Walter. Walter Armstrong. Yes, we did.
All right, okay. Thank you for doing that. And thank you to the paraprofessionals for working with you guys. Next up is item E, the approval of the appointment of Paul Worth as the Boxford representative to the Essex North Shore Agricultural and Technical School District Committee. Boxford's been without one of their reps for a while, and Paul has volunteered to step in. Yeah, Paul, come on up, sorry.
Okay.
Or set up this way. But, so if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself a bit and letting us know why you're interested, and then we'll do a quick vote.
Sure. My name's Paul Worth. I feel very qualified, kind of uniquely qualified for the position. I actually spent 22 years at North Shore Tech and was part of the merger when we merged with Essex Aggie, and was responsible for the building of the athletic facilities. I was the athletic director at the time. So 22 years of education, and I wanted to go back to the school and give back a little bit. But when I say uniquely qualified, prior to going into education, when I got out of school in '75, I couldn't get a teaching job. There weren't any around. So I spent 12 years in the car business and know that business pretty well. And then for 7 years after that, I went into construction and had a flooring contract business right here in Boxford. And then I started the football program at North Shore Tech back in 1994, and they gave me a teaching job at the time, and I taught 5 subjects. They gave me a full-time job, and I worked my way into, sorry.
Keep going.
I worked my way into a math job, and got my master's degree in mathematics, and became the chair of the mathematics department. So that's practically, that's my history. So I just feel like I want to give back to the school. I love the school, and Boxford needs somebody to represent them.
Well, thank you. You do sound perfect for the job. And thank you for volunteering during a pandemic,
You're welcome.
to be honest with you. So is it just the Boxford members? That
Yes,
don't-
yes,
okay.
Boxford members.
So there are 4 Boxford members on this committee, so I guess I'll move to approve the appointment of Paul Worth as a Boxford rep to the Essex Agricultural and Technical School District Committee.
Second.
Kristen seconds it, okay? And all in favor? Bonnie, Kristen, Terry, and me. Unanimous. So you guys are all sitting together. Thank you.
Okay,
Paul.
thank you very
Good
much.
luck.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank
Good luck.
you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Good luck.
thank you very much.
You know how to get back to your car?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Great. Moving on, and I should say that we also have our student rep here with us tonight. Lindsay? What's your last name, Lindsay? Sorry.
Fireman?
Thank you. So feel free to join our conversations and deliberations. We'd love to hear from you.
I have a statement prepared for whenever that fits in.
Let's see. Yeah, why don't you go ahead now, if you're ready.
Hello everyone, I'm Lindsay Byman and I'm the Junior Class Student Advisory Board member. First off, myself and the whole student body would like to acknowledge how difficult your job has been, and we thank you for your work to get us back in a learning environment as close to normal as possible. You have done a commendable job with this transition, and it has been far more successful than foreseen. You'll be happy to hear that many students enjoyed the chance to finally connect with their teachers and that they feel more engaged in the classroom than they did at home. I would like to share a few things for your consideration to enable you to make the most well-informed decisions as possible. Teachers dividing their attention between students in person and online has lowered the productivity of our learning and added distractions that detract from lessons. Oftentimes, students will take the same test in person and online, but this gives those who are remote an unfair advantage because they have access to unlimited resources. Some teachers have resolved this by allowing tests to be open-nosed to all students. Though attending school in person decreases the sameness that occurs at home, the transition from 4 classes a day to 7 has been stressful for both the teachers and students because we receive almost double the amount of work than before, and our blocks to get ahead or catch up have been removed. We fear that this will burn everyone out, and I have already stayed up late doing homework the nights we've been back. Also, those who built in study blocks to get work done cannot productively do so because the auditorium does not have any outlets or desks and the Wi-Fi isn't reliable. So students have reported that they cannot write and that their necks hurt from looking down at their screens. Every student who I've spoken to has suggested reinstating the wind block or any period where they can seek help from teachers or catch up on work. For in-person learners, they could stay in the classroom they're in and access teachers through Blackboard Collaborate. It is mentally and physically taxing to be working with no break all day, and studies show that humans are more productive after they have a chance to mentally release. Our brains do not get a break that would typically occur during a normal school year, and this is causing students to have trouble focusing because there is no time to unwind. Students have also voiced hopes that they could choose their lunch seats, which will allow students to connect with friends in a safe environment. Once again, I understand that the task you face is not an easy one, and I would like to express my gratitude for your efforts to restore a sense of normalcy. With the input and ideas from the student body, we can work together to make Masco as positive a learning environment as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Lindsay, we are going to be talking about, like Mike and Jeff are giving us an update on the school reopening, and we're going to talk about a few other things today. If you can stay and listen, that'd be great. And actually, we're going to start with the next agenda item, the middle school principal report.
Okay. This technology don't like me here, TJ. There it goes.
Oh,
It's on. TJ. So I'll just give the projector a sec here to warm up. Okay, well, thanks for having me here tonight for the middle school update. I'll talk about the reopening as it applies to the middle school and go through my presentation with you from there. So school opening, as we all know, we welcomed cohort A on Monday and cohort B on Tuesday, with students attending every other day from there. So cohort A is in school 3 days this week, with cohort B in school 2 days, and then we'll flip next week. I would say overall, general feeling, we had a generally smooth opening of the building with good feedback from parents, guardians, and caregivers, as well as from teachers and from the few middle school students that I was able to speak with. So first 3 days recap, I think overall in the middle school, the 7-period schedule worked out well. Over the course of the last 3 days. For us, it was similar to last year as far as the times, with the subtraction of the rotation that we typically have with the A, B, C, D, E, F days. The period lengths are similar, and I'll show you what our middle school schedule looks like in a few slides. Students have been very cooperative and compliant. I hate to use those words for middle school students or students in general, but given the fact that they are passing between classes and have to follow the arrows and the directions and keep 6 feet apart and sit in assigned seats in the cafeteria, they've been very good with that, and they have been very cooperative, and we've had no problems with the movement throughout the building or in the cafeteria during those times between classes, during the mask breaks or anything like that. So that's gone very well, and I've been very pleased with that. Teachers have reported strong participation by both remote and in-person learners when they're in class. And although it can be a juggle between the two cohorts, the ones online and the ones in the building, they have reported that they're working to blend things pretty well, and that students have been very receptive and open to it. So that's been good. Pros for school opening, definitely the increased time on learning for all students has been a positive in the middle school, and it definitely gone a long way with teachers and students to be able to see them more, and considering that our times of 45 minutes are very close to what they would be pre-pandemic, that has gone well. Addressing the social emotional learning, both in person and online, teachers are keeping that at the forefront of their teaching, and students are able to connect in person for the first time with any types of special education providers or the student support center and other adults in the building. So I think that's been very good as well. Those relationships began to be established remotely, and now that they have a chance to meet in person, I think that's been really beneficial for kids and for the adults or teachers. And then families having the option to choose whichever cohort they felt most comfortable with, remote or hybrid, was a good choice for them to be able to have. And a lot of parents who didn't feel comfortable with their kids in the building were able to take that remote option, and I think they've been happy with that from what I've heard. So our attendance, we've had very strong attendance between the cohorts. And I put a chart up there for you, attendance by date, combining remote and in person. So the last 3 days, 97% attendance on Monday, then 100% yesterday, and 99% today. I looked at the data from last year over year, we averaged 89.2% present per day during the same week last year. So that's definitely a bonus for us for this midweek of October. So cons with the school opening, our school counselors did deal with many last minute changes in the hybrid remote option, with quite a few parents at the last minute last week choosing the remote option. So we did have to scramble a bit with our cohort A and B schedules as far as shifting kids one way or another. And making sure that we had that all in place for Monday. But we were able to do it, and now we've asked families to really commit to staying where they are, not that we can tell them they have to, but that they, it's very difficult for us to try and balance the classes and keep the class sizes at no more than 12 or 13 students per room if we had been seeing additional movement. Drop off and pickup. We recognize that has been a challenge. The last couple of days have definitely gone better after a couple emails from myself and Mr. Delani and parents and families getting used to the new procedures. We had the car line moving much more quickly today. We were able to get the buses out fairly quickly the last couple of afternoons, while recognizing that there are more students probably being driven than they normally would, even in a typical year with a full building. Managing the Wi-Fi and connectivity, IT has been on top of that and addressing it quickly, so kudos to them. And then just the class coverage moving forward as we move into a normal cold and flu season and not having our typical sub-pools that we would have. We're going to just be very creative in making sure that we have classes covered, and right now the proctors and class coverages is working out well in the middle school, and we've been able to make it work. So it's gone well so far. So there's the middle school schedule that we settled on. So we have the 45-minute class periods, which I think they're within a minute or two of what we had pre-pandemic. Lunches are a little bit different than what they were as far as minutes, but it's the same as far as the way we break them up between 7th and 8th grade. We have the mask break in there in the afternoon, so we made that block 60 minutes long as opposed to 45. And then we have 5 minutes of passing time in between classes. So for the remote learners, that gives them 5 minutes to log out of one class and log into the next. And the math break in the afternoon with the 5 minutes of passing time built in, we felt was a good time for kids to be able to take a break, and especially since they have such an early lunch in the middle school, the time works out well for the day overall. And we took out home rooms, as you know, so it gave us that flexibility that we needed with the schedule. So lunches, I'll spend a minute there speaking about lunches because I know there was a lot of questions about lunches as we were leading up to the hybrid and how are they going to work and eating in the field house. I think I can sum it up easily. Mike and I talked about this week, but they do seem institutional with the students sitting in desks and separate from each other. Certainly not what we would all choose for middle school lunch, but I do have to say they've progressed very smoothly. There is a free lunch, so if you say there's no free lunch, we do have it this year, as we all know, so that's been a bonus. There really has been no issues in the cafeteria. The kids have been great finding their seats, coming in single file, being dismissed, so that's gone well. They cleaned up after themselves, they even pushed in their chairs, they followed the seating plan, the traffic flow, going through to pick up their lunches, so I've been very impressed with that. And then a big shout out to our cleaning crew. They did a great job working quickly to clean all the desks and the chairs in between the lunch periods. It's like a NASCAR pit crew, seeing them go out there, spray all the desks down, wipe everything, get it all ready, all in about 15 minutes before the next lunch comes in. So overall, I have to say the field house and lunches have if you can say they've been a bright spot, given the circumstances, they've been a bright spot. So who doesn't like a few pictures? There we go, opening in photos. Ms. Amsler did a graffiti-style name design as one of her remote projects for students, and then she was able to print out, hang up the artwork on a couple of our bulletin boards in the middle school as we welcomed kids back this week. So those are the first couple pictures there. Then I have a couple pictures on the bottom of students in the classrooms on a typical day. So I think one of them was social studies with Mr. Mahoney, and then I have a math class there on the right with Ms. Clyde. So overall, I'd have to say, in general, the first three days, although there's some bumps in the road and some challenges that we saw, we worked hard to smooth them out, and things have progressed pretty smoothly. We're remaining patient and resilient. All right. So, any questions?
Thank you for that update.
Okay, you're welcome.
So you talked a little bit about the changes that were made last week based on parents requesting that their kids switch. But did you say everyone who wanted to switch was allowed to? So
yes.
When it started, everyone got what they asked?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. There were some parents that switched from what they replied to on the survey, but we were able to accommodate every change. And most of them at the end of last week were moving from hybrid to remote, which is much easier as far as the scheduling aspect of the cohorts goes.
Yeah.
So we were able to accommodate that.
And then you alluded to asking them to kind of stay committed to their choice because it will be difficult if they switch to come in person.
We've asked families to give us a chance and stick with their choice, but we can't say you have to commit to that for the year or for a certain period of time. It would be more difficult to bring students from remote into the hybrid schedule. Not to say it can't happen, but we need about a week to two lead time to be able to do that to make sure everything can be balanced out.
That makes sense. Do you have many, I know that we had talked about you might have classes where you have like too many kids to keep everybody 6 feet apart, and that in some cases you might need one kid per day might need to go learn remotely elsewhere. Is much of that going on?
That was a concern I know that the high school had. In the middle school, we haven't seen that. I was able to fit all the students into the classrooms with the class sizes that we have. So that that's worked out okay for us, given our class sizes that we have right now in the building.
Great.
Yep. Yes, Silly?
I'm interested in hearing how the Wi-Fi is going. I know that there was mention in your report.
I got it.
Okay, Michael talked about it.
Okay, we'll let Mike handle it.
I know that it's a lot of work. And can I also just, with the lunches, I haven't seen my kids haven't bought yet, but my understanding is if the student feels that it wasn't adequate, they can request a second.
Oh, there.
Yes. Yeah, they can go up for a second bag lunch
Yeah.
if they would like, yep.
And are those, this is petty, this is right here, but how do they know what the meal is? Do they find it ahead of time?
So we have a menu, and the menu is posted as you walk in, you have 2 lines and there's 2 options.
Yeah,
And you can go to chicken patties or cheeseburgers and follow the signage.
but it's not posted ahead of time, and it's not yet.
Not yet, but it will be. Good work.
Sounds good, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Oh, Bonnie?
I had a question about, for students that are in hybrid, in cohort A or B, when they, for whatever reason, need to stay home briefly, but can work remotely from home, what is the best? Do they just email the teachers and let them know that they're going to be home that day?
Do you mean if a student is sick?
No.
So if a student's taking a vacation or going away for the weekend and missing a Friday?
Like if a student were being extra cautious with a contact tracing situation?
Well, if it was that kind of a situation, we'd ask the parent to call our school nurse immediately to let us know and give us a rundown of the case. And then the student, in that respect, the student could learn remotely and access classes remotely, and we would just mark them remote present. So yeah, in that case, we could make the accommodation.
Yeah. And then if the student has, like, isn't sure if they're sick, there's like a lot, if they aren't sure if they should go or not, they should still call.
I mean, yeah, we need to know if the student, especially if it's a day where the student's supposed to be in the building, we need to know if they're going to be learning remotely. So the parent needs to call the main office, and if it's a health issue, call the nurse. If it was something more like the student was due to be in school on a Friday with their cohort, but the family, they wanted to learn at home that day, that's a separate issue.
Thank you.
Yes, welcome.
All right, anyone
Okay.
else?
Well, yeah, I guess just to, put a fine point on that. I mean, I think it's reasonable that this isn't a revolving door. You don't get to wake up each day and decide I'm going to go to, be in school today or be at home.
Yes.
So, you're supposed to be in school. You should be in school, and if there's a legitimate reason, contact your office.
Yes, I agree.
Kind of like the way it was before, right? Like unexcused disagreements. But no, Bill, I think that's a really good point. For this to work best for students.
Yeah,
And for the teachers.
for everyone involved. I mean, we all have to share this, the responsibility to make this work. And if it becomes a revolving door, I mean, we're adding just a crazy level of complexity to this that's just not necessary. If someone has a health concern, stay home. I mean, I don't think there's any question about that, but it's not like how you feel today, where you want to learn today.
And you're right, the system is designed with sort of an expectation that we will have students who may have to go into quarantine for, the 2-week period, and so that it's set up so that they can just continue along in their classes remotely, but yeah, I mean, it's something as Phil said, we need to know what's going on, if that's it, and it really shouldn't just be it can't be a choice or a revolving door like you described.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so that, just to clarify, so that phone call then goes to, it's a phone call to the front office?
Yeah, it's a phone call to the
Okay.
front office, just as you would in a pre-pandemic year, call your child in sick, call the main office. Most likely you would talk with Del Silva and tell her, and then speak with the school nurse more about the specifics of the health concern.
And then that's when it's decided if it's an absence or not? Because I'm just wondering, like, if you're home,
Yeah, I think.
but you're still working remotely, is it
If
an
they're working
absence?
remotely, we have an attendance code that's remote present,
Okay,
so that we could code that student that way. But we have to know that in order to do it.
yeah. And that goes to the front office, okay.
Yeah, and it's important that we know ahead of time, because if we're expecting a student in the building and then he or she's at home and we haven't gotten the call yet to the main office, we're wondering where that child is, and then they just get marked absent.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you so much,
Thank
and
you.
thanks for
All right.
this week and getting it going.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we will move on to the school reopening update with Mike and Jeff.
So ours is combined into one long report.
Okay?
Because everybody likes pictures. So, there was in the morning, the other morning. So, this, yes, the road that we took to start this past Monday started for us, going back thinking back to late June, when we first started getting the reopening guidelines from the Department of Education. And so we, did our plans. We talked about our three different plans that we were going to have: our remote, our hybrid, and possibly in-person learning. Back in August, we came up with this idea of starting remote for the first couple of weeks, and with the goal of changing over to hybrid on October 9th. And that's exactly what we ended up doing, with literally hundreds, almost probably in the thousands of hours of labor to get to this point in time where I was sitting in my truck on Monday going, how can I be late on the first day of school? So, that's where we were. I think, we've tried to work this out a little better.
We shouldn't have left Sunday.
I think it's worked out. I think one of the key takeaways on this is there are a lot more parents driving students to school now. The buses seem to be very lightly passengers going into the school and then coming out.
So even though it's half the school coming, it's still more.
It's
Dropping off.
seems like more drop-offs than we're in regular, because that's where the real traffic happens, is over on the middle school side of the building. So it's once I got past the middle school entrance, I got right into. So those kinds of things we're looking at. So kind of echo a lot of things that Phil said, but overall things seem to be going really well. I really think the planning and preparation have paid off. Facilities were really ready for students on Monday. I want to thank Jeff, Doug Batchelor, Steve Burt, and their teams for the many hours. I know they worked almost straight through the last 2 weekends that they put in over the last month to get us to Monday. The plan for moving students to the building and the signage has really worked very well. And students and faculty have been able to, I think, pretty easily navigate the buildings, and they've settled into our new normal pretty quickly. One operational issue that was a struggle on the first day, as I show here, was the traffic during morning drop-off and afternoon pickup. And Phil and Pete Delani sent out information to parents with a little guidance that hopefully alleviates some of those backups. I think in the morning, particularly, parents were waiting until 7:20 to let kids out of their cars instead of just dropping them off, which leads to this kind of backup. So if parents, if you're coming in and it's before 7:20, kids can wait outside, they can wait under the tent if they need to, so there's no need to just sit there and wait for that door to unlock so kids can just walk straight into the building. One of the real biggest operational challenges to bringing students back into the building was figuring out how to feed roughly 800 students over the course of the school day. I personally spent been present for almost all of the lunch periods this week. I think I missed the last lunch today to come back and write this. So I can say that the system really performed very well. Students are assigned to one of 4 lunch periods. There's 2 lunch periods for the middle school, one for 7th grade and one for 8th grade, and then we have 2 for the high school. All 4 lunches are held in the field house. Students sit in an assigned seat and the reason we have assigned seats at lunch is for contact tracing. So we need to know if one student does test positive, we need to know who all those students' close contact were over the course of the day. So I know students right now it's just alphabetical through the rows, and it's hard. I'll show you the next picture. That's kind of what it looks like.
Lindsay, did you hear what Mike just said about assigned seating at lunches?
So we get it. We know the kids want to sit with their friends, but as I said, there's really no other way to kind of know where people were when you've got upwards of 300 seats in that room at this point right now. So upwards of 300. There could be as many as 300 students.
Our largest lunch has 302 kids.
Yeah, the largest lunch takes up almost the entire 25 seats over A through L or A through N, something like that.
So are they they're allowed to talk to each other?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Are they
They do.
allowed?
They do. It's not loud at all. No, it's not. Students do talk to each other. It's if they know the other kids around them. I mean, that's part of the awkwardness of all of this is that, Abel is in seat A1 and, Baker might be in A3, and so it's just like, do you know this kid? So they're making friends, yes. I mean, that's what we're going to encourage. These student desks, the seats that are there, they've been removed from classrooms throughout our buildings, and that's allowed us to, put the desks 6 feet apart when needed in the classrooms. The seats are here in the cafeteria are also spaced 6 feet apart. We talked about the students can either bring their lunch from home, or they get to choose from 2 different options of bag lunch that is prepared by our food staff. The United States Department of Agriculture has a program that it's allowing us to offer these lunches free of charge through the end of June 2021. At the conclusion of each lunch, and actually I should back up and say you can go for seconds, and there was a student we were asking yesterday, one of the high school lunches, and we said, is that your second? He said, oh no, that's my third. So they can go back to the line as many times as they want. And USDA is just reimbursing us for the lunch. So yeah, we are encouraging kids to go through more if they need it. At the conclusion of each lunch, our cleaning services contractors thoroughly clean and disinfect each individual student desk so that it's ready for the next group of students. As Phil said, that's one of the largest high school lunches. Phil said, it's like a NASCAR pit crew. It comes in, they have a group that comes in and wipes everything clean. They sweep the floors around, and then after that's all done, there's a disinfectant spray that is applied to every desk. The dwell time on that spray is 1 minute, so there's no need to go back and re-wipe it. It's dry within a minute after it's been sprayed.
So if I could just add, so the original plan was to hire part-time hallway and CAF monitors, and we weren't successful in doing that. So on Friday night, I called our cleaner and I said, let's up the number of porters from 3 full-time, let's add 5 part-time. And they were ready to roll, and I asked for additional equipment, more high-powered equipment to be brought in, and it's worked seamlessly, so it's really worked well for me.
Is that what he's holding?
Yeah, so that's actually
It's a pneumatic machine.
attached to a compressor on a cart.
So instead of the guns and the backpacks, which would have done the job, just not as efficiently and as quickly. We brought in some heavy duty.
More firepower?
Yes, more firepower.
Firepower, exactly.
So we can actually clean and disinfect 312 seats in less than 15 minutes.
Crazy. And kind of for the sake of the public, just to redefine again dwell time, because my understanding is like that's all I'm thinking.
So we use EPA certified cleaners and disinfectants throughout the building, and we're using a special food grade EPA certified product here, so that obviously food grade means that you can eat and all that kind of stuff, and you're disinfecting that. So dwell time is the time that it takes to kill bacteria and viruses upon contact. So this dwell time is one of the faster dwell times. As Mike said, it's a minute. So from the time, so they spray the droplets of water in the solution are very, very, very fine, and they actually dry within a minute to 90 seconds. And then the crew, so they spray, they let sit, and then they go back and they wipe. And then that's the whole top, the edges, and the seat and the back of the seat. So there's, we've kind of perfected a process.
It's been interesting to watch them work all week because they've been trying to figure out, their training on this too.
Yeah.
And so they've been, practicing what's the best method. How do you walk through this? Which faster? Do you go up? Do you go down? I mean, this would be kind of interesting.
Is that a cord that's getting caught in between?
Yeah, it's a long.
So it's a cord
Yeah.
and a hose.
It's a hose.
It's a pneumatic machine.
There's a machine on a cart that's plugged into the wall,
Okay.
and then he's got a good, 200-foot hose that he walks up and down the rows with and sprays every desk.
So it's like if it takes like 15 minutes now, it's gonna probably be shaved down to 10 minutes going forward
I
as
wouldn't
they,
say 10, maybe 12,
Maybe.
13.
Yeah.
as they get their best.
So the good news in all this is that, as Mike talked about, there's 4 lunches each day, and they progress in size. The largest lunch, which requires the most work, is the last lunch, and we have unlimited time to make that, to clean and disinfect, to get ready for the next day.
That's one, of the good things about the way the schedule's been put together is that there is a gap in time in between each lunch so that they can actually do all this.
How much time in between each lunch? Is it 15?
I think it's like 10 or 15.
15.
Yeah.
15 for the middle school, I know that.
And we charged Phil with becoming the DJ. To pipe in
Get some music, 'cause it is.
Oh, for the cleaning
It is,
crew?
no,
for the kids.
It's quiet.
It's quiet.
It's so quiet, and
Yeah, it's really quiet.
huge field house, so
Right,
we're gonna try to spice it up a little.
I like that.
Everyone's on their
That's what we're trying
phone,
to figure
probably.
out. Some of the middle school teachers had some ideas too about, maybe bringing a projector in and
Yeah.
showing a movie on the wall or something like that.
Yeah.
It's actually, the other thing is with the, 5 minutes of passing time on either end of a 35-minute lunch, it's a good amount of time. So the students aren't rushed. My first thing was thinking back to my, cafeteria duty days as an assistant principal where you got 20 minutes, you're like, let's go, 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 go.
Yeah.
And we got everybody in, we got everybody into food, and I said, okay, now what do we do? There's still, 20 minutes left in the lunch period, so.
Chew slowly.
I think it's a good time.
Another lunch.
It is a good amount of time.
Yeah.
Good time, yeah. So go get another lunch or,
Is it their wind block too with lunch?
no,
Just kidding.
not really. It's not, although, there's a lot of, times that I see, students are pulling out their laptops or their
Yeah.
Chromebooks and, doing some work or just even watching a YouTube video while
Yeah.
they're sitting there eating their lunch.
Taking a break.
It is a little bit of a break time and it's longer than I think it was in the past. We built in more time because we just didn't know what it was going to take to do this.
Well, just too efficient.
Now it's working pretty smoothly, so it's nice.
It's great.
Just something that makes me feel really good about the cleaning process, because I've been thinking a lot about making sure that everyone's safe during these days, and that we're reducing the chance of spread. And I just know, like, from our business, that the thing that I've learned over the last 7 months is that the biggest way to prevent the spread is in the day, all day long. So the good habits, so having your kids in wearing the mask, staying distance and not touching, and washing hands a lot, and keeping contact with a contact space that has a higher chance of potentially having anything disinfected. So this kind of thing is like, if there was going to be any chance, this is the area that you worry about, and this has been covered. Looking at the system that has now been put in place, makes you feel really confident that whatever we can do to keep it from spreading from this location will be.
I mean, the combination of all those things and the things that we've implemented in the space and across campus in terms of that enhanced disinfecting program that I put in place working with the cleaning vendor. I mean, this building is extraordinarily clean.
That's why we have 100% attendance. Nobody's ever going to get sick.
Fingers crossed.
I mean, it really is. I'm happy with where we are.
Yeah.
Also,
Really good.
Thank you.
And as I said, it was one of the biggest kind of headaches that we had when we were going in this, of, how do we feed all these kids? So moving on here, we can talk a little bit about this, but our teachers are really adjusting to the challenge of teaching students who are both in class and remote at the same time. We know our teachers always want to do the best that they can for the students, and I think, we're hearing some frustration that they feel like they're not putting their best out, but I think we also need to realize that, teaching to learners that are both in person and remote at the same time is a new experience for everybody here. I'm kind of using this expression when I'm talking to teachers. You said, we're all first-year teachers this year. And it's frustrating when you've been a 20-year veteran and you feel like you've got everything down, and now all of a sudden you're in an environment that you're not as comfortable with or confident with. And so that's something we're understanding of, we're supporting of. We understand that learning how to do this and do this well is really going to take some time and some practice. That's all we can expect. People are going to try to do their best, and that we'll move forward and help them the best we can. We're also looking at some ways that we can administratively provide some time to help teachers with lesson preparation. So trying to think through and work out, but it's something we're also supportive of. Moving on, we did have some IT issues, small ones that impacted the classroom when students returned to the building on Monday morning. What we found out was many students needed help in removing their personal cell phones from our network. So they walked in the building, their phones automatically logged into the building, and all of our network for students has a policy of one device per individual. And so their phone was on, they didn't know their phone was on, they put up their Chromebook, and the Chromebook locked them out. Said, we can't log you in. So that was something that the IT staff figured out pretty quickly in the first period Monday morning, and their directions that were out by the second period of tell the kids to shut off their phones. So that was something, and they spent the better part of the day Monday making sure people were logged in and had the right credentials and everything else. The other issue that was a bigger problem was yesterday. After rebooting our firewall on Monday night, we talked about the great lightning strike of July. There were some IT things that were actually put back in place on Monday, from what I understand. That required the firewall to be restarted. And when it restarted, it didn't come back. So it slowed our internet traffic to a trickle. All of the processors were literally at 99.9% capacity because of whatever this malfunction was. So it took a good part of the day on Tuesday, dealing with, direct calls to the vendor for the firewall. But that got resolved, I believe, by, early afternoon yesterday. And things seem to be okay today. So it's resolved. It's just all these hiccups that, we hadn't had people here for 6 months. So I'm trying to figure out how to get things going. I also talked to Dan a little bit this morning. So at that time, I think first period, we were only using about half of the bandwidth that we actually had available, so that's a good thing. It seems like we have the resources on the network so to support what we're trying to do. So it was a good
good news.
How about I'm happy to hear about the bandwidth. How about like the power of kids' laptops and Chromebooks? Like, do they stay charged all day, or has that been an issue at all?
Most Chromebooks can stay charged between 8 and 10 hours. We are looking into setting up some charging stations. That presents a bit of a problem for us because of the limitations with the fire code around extension cords, power strips, and all those kinds of things. So that's one of the things that remains on our list of things to continue to work on.
Do you know if anyone, Bill, have you heard of that being an issue for any kids running out of power on their devices?
I haven't heard of it being a major issue, but here in the library, we do have power cords for the Chromebooks that can be signed out for the day in return. So if a student forgot their power cord or didn't bring it, needed to charge up for,
Just need to find an outlet.
they can sign one out.
I have not heard that it's
It hasn't been.
It's something we're going to try to
Yeah, it's something we had talked about, in the last couple of weeks of like, okay, here's the next thing on the list. Okay, what about power for Chromebooks? And we need to get through a fire inspection last week too.
Lindsay?
I know that myself and a lot of my friends' laptops die really fast, so I carry a charger around. And luckily for me, I sit close to an outlet in most of my classes. But one of my friends had an issue where she was in study hall in the auditorium and her laptop was about to die, and she couldn't find an outlet, and she had her charger.
Okay. All right. Thank you. They're working on it.
You need to get like portable chargers, like
The bricks, yeah.
yeah, the bricks, like stuff that everybody, or a couple per class or whatever.
Yeah, good idea.
Sorry.
Sorry. And so, we've also made significant progress in hiring our proctors to cover classes for teachers who have been granted accommodations to work from home. We did an analysis of the exact need for proctors based on the number of teachers, and determined that many of our staff who are on accommodations don't actually require a classroom proctor. So the current need is 15 FTEs for proctors. We've hired 11 to date. We're going to continue to hire additional proctors as we receive applications. Leadership team has worked out a schedule to maximize the placement of the proctors that we have hired, and so we've been able to cover almost all of the needed classes, and we'll talk about that in middle school. In places where we still need coverage, we've used other existing personnel to proctor classes, and this has truly been a situation where all of us has had to pitch in and make the hybrid model work. I did a class in the middle school on Monday, and I'm currently signed up for 3 classes in the high school tomorrow. It's just kind of,
What are you teaching?
I did Mandarin on Monday. That was and I have social studies tomorrow.
Good job.
Good shot. Yeah. So, and kind of leave us all with musical instruments. Big top. So they're out there playing under the tents, kind of spreading out. So they actually did change the regs so that you can play inside, but you have to get a cover for the instruments. And so we ordered them, Randy said, so.
Yeah, we ordered them about 8 weeks ago.
So I would think their preference would be to do this, but then once the weather gets.
The tent's not going to be up forever either.
Oh, right. Yeah, December 1st.
The tent will come down, around.
So you're saying that the covers makes it so that instruments can be played inside?
Yeah.
But can you sing inside yet or no?
Not yet.
Even with masks, because that's a cover
Yeah, that's been
to an instrument.
it's still on the, that was the latest DESI guidance, it was last week, I think.
You could come at lunch and sing.
That would be
Fine.
School committee talent show. Right. The school committee talent show,
Yeah. The negotiation. We're here all week.
Sure, yeah, I mean, it's gone well, has it been perfect? No. we're working to get better at it, so.
Well,
I
day
think
three has to
people have done a lot of good work.
And I appreciate everyone's patience. I feel like I didn't get a lot of emails, and I feel like I would have. So I think people are being patient and giving everyone a chance, and so getting a result. What is the how many teachers are teaching?
15
Just roughly. So if you said that we
So there's 10 that are on, there's 11 that are on a year-long remote accommodation. And then there's probably, there's several more that are on kind of childcare accommodation that can range from 1 day a week to 3 to 5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's where that FTE piece comes
Yeah.
in, because, so we can use a proctor in some one proctor in some cases to cover for 3 teachers who are on like partial remote work accommodations.
Okay. All right, well, I like it. That's better than before. I was just kind of thinking it was an all or nothing, but it's nice if they can,
Yeah.
some days.
So by the end of last week, I had gone through and I had responded to every single person that had asked for some type of accommodation, whether it be a remote work accommodation or their own health, their spouse's health, childcare. Then we had some in-person accommodations, some additional types of PPE, et cetera. So there were probably somewhere between 60 and 70 letters that I had to get out to people, and they were all very unique and individualized. And then this week, then what we did was we kind of went through the proctors that we had and assigned coverages. And that was coordinated. It was principally by the principals.
So at the end of last week, we created a matrix of, who was granted an accommodation, and then let's look at the proctors and how can we fill in.
And then
schedule.
Patty and I spent a lot of time together on certain individuals who didn't have a typical classroom teacher role, and whether those folks needed a proctor or other supports in place to provide support while they worked remotely. And that's partially what drove that number down from 23 proctors that we talked about at our last meeting, closer to 15 or 16. It's kind of it changes everything.
A lot of those you're talking about were service providers, and so they worked out their schedule in such a way that they didn't need a proctor. So I have to give kudos to the staff as well, but they really made it work so that they didn't need an extra body, or sometimes it was just that the students would need an alternate space. So the libraries have been open for that option for the students, so that there's some supervision, but they can access their services if that service provider is remote. So it's worked out for them for the most part.
Additionally, there are paraprofessionals in some of these classrooms where we're actually utilizing them to serve in kind of dual roles. So it's really worked out well, and we've been able to, working together as a team, really reduce that number down. And hopefully we can find another 3 or 4 proctors to fill all those roles.
So when you said you were in the Mandarin class, was the teacher teaching?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah, and so.
it was okay that you didn't know.
Correct.
So how did that speak? Did it?
It's for the kids in the class, it seemed like, they didn't miss a beat. It was their first day, obviously, in person.
Yeah.
But the teacher.
Same as it was before.
Yeah, and I think that's where some of the teachers are seeing success, is that they really haven't changed too much from what they did during just the straight remote.
Okay.
And so, in this case, those kids were on, and the teacher had a direct instruction period, and the kids had headphones in, and they were listening to what the teacher was saying, and they were answering questions, for the first 15 or 20 minutes, and then the teacher gave them, I think it was a video to watch, and then they answer some questions on the video. So that's what happened. It was a typical 45-minute period.
First question is, have you guys slept? Yeah?
Not in a bucket.
Okay, well, hopefully that will be accomplished at the end of this week. So second of all, my kind of thing that I'm saying is, it's day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'd say let's give it a few weeks. What I'm hearing from you guys is I think kind of the overarching theme that seems to be happening, that it's being figured out. Now that it's here, we can see it in person and figure it out, and so let us do that. I think what I'm kind of also hearing, maybe a weak point, or maybe the thing that might be worked out last is, and I don't know if you guys have any more information on this, is the teaching to remote period. For the kids that are remote. That seems to be one of the ones that because it's individualized per teacher, right? How they're teaching to remote. I know they're set up with all these live stream cameras, but I don't know if you've heard anything on that, but for the kids that are never coming in, what I'm hearing is that they're playing with it. It's not set up, so it seems like it's following suit, but that might be one of the harder areas.
Yeah. What we're seeing more is actually people using Blackboard with their laptop just like they used at home, or used from the classroom when all the kids were at home. Except, so now they have, and that was one of the things that Vin also had mentioned. So our thought originally was going to be that teacher live streaming to the kids at home, and the kids who were in the classroom weren't going to necessarily be using their computers, but they are. And so what we're getting is a teacher and 12 kids in the classroom, because they're all using Blackboard, teachers setting up groups with kids so that, they may be partnering up a kid who's, learning from remote with a kid who's in the classroom, and setting up a side group, which you can do through Blackboard, and having them work together as, partners or pairs, which we wouldn't be able to do if we had kids just in the class, because you're not supposed to get up and move proximity-wise to another student. So really doing any kind of cooperative learning or anything else has to get done through the technology that we have. So
Which is good and bad. I said it's good and bad that way, because you kind of want them to have a break from it while they're here, but it's good that they can be still all communicating and doing cooperative work.
It's hard. It's not something that people are used to doing.
Yeah. Now they are. Now they're pros at it.
We're working on it.
Joe, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. You've been seeing on the news that a lot of schools that have gone from remote to hybrid are starting to go back to remote. What would cause Masco to go back to remote?
I think, a significant number of cases at this point, I think would be it. Something that, where we were worried about, with the idea of community spread happening in the school.
Is there a number that's dictated, or is it?
There isn't any number that anybody's really given us or anything else. And I think it's the idea. So, there have been cases in the elementary school and Middleton. But, after the contact tracing has gone through and everything else, they've realized that, those kids got sick somewhere else and happened to come to school and didn't really get anybody else in the school sick. So they've just continued on. I think as long as that's what we would be seeing in terms of cases, we would do the same thing. But we'd also work with the local departments of public health to say, okay, are we still safe? Are we still okay? Are we still going along the right way? And as I said, that's the real question. It's like when we start getting getting into instances where kids are getting other kids sick or other adults sick in the school, then that's something we always want to consider, okay, it might be time to go back to remote.
I've also met with the nurses, with Irene Doros, and I've asked them to really take detailed data in regards to, and they always have, in regards to the office visits and whatnot, but I want to know how many kids are coming into the offices, for what reason, and then did anyone go home, did any staff go home, things like that. So I'll have that information over time as well. And I did say purposefully to the nurses that I know the school committee is going to want to know, how those the offices are working and what is happening, right? Once we are back in the building. So I'll make sure that I can bring that at some point, Joe, and so you can get an idea of what's happening. But we have sent kids home with symptoms. We have sent staff home.
Symptoms, yeah, nobody's come back.
But we don't have any confirmed.
Yeah, any confirmed cases.
And I think we had discussed at a prior meeting that the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has really set some barriers to a quick and unilateral decision by any school district to go from hybrid back to remote. So, my recollection, and I think I reread it in the lengthy protocol document that all of us got, and I'm sure everyone enjoyed it, that had the phone number of the gentleman that you have to contact and basically get permission to do that. So there is no magic number, and when it appears that that's the right thing to do, we still have this other hurdle to overcome. Is that a fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was Kentucky made a move from hybrid back to remote for a couple of days. I was going back on 2 weeks ago, and it was a case where one student had 30 plus close contacts. And so they just said, let's shut this all down for a couple of days and see what's actually happening. And I didn't hear that it was, that many students actually came down with it. So, but it's that close contact issue is what we're going to be chasing.
So in this scenario, though, is that, my understanding is we have a policy that we put into place that if you as superintendent feel you need to shut it down, you can shut it down. You don't have to get permission. So is the number that you call probably be more of like, I need to shut the school down for weeks as opposed to 350 days to figure out?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think their state's expecting us to call them on pretty much anyone.
But at the same time, if you feel it's not safe to open tomorrow,
yeah, I can
you have to
ultimately, yes, it is my call, but I'm still going to have to call the state and say, this is what I have, this is what I'm going to do.
But I think there's two types of kind of shutdowns. There's one, like you talked about, a cluster, right? So it's a big group of either staff or students or both, and we need to shut things down for a shorter period of time to kind of figure things out, contact trace, clean the building.
See who gets
right?
clean the
So
building.
maybe that's 3 or 4 days, and then there's a longer term scenario where, the data in the communities is significantly rising. There's a major outbreak in the communities, and it just makes sense to transition back to remote. So that's how I see it, that short term and that long term. And then, but in both instances, we have to call Russell and Anne Marie and to let them know what we're doing and why.
I guess what I'm saying is Russell and Anne Marie, if you're not comfortable opening the school, you're not going to wait for Russell and Anne Marie to say, okay, you don't have to.
He's going to communicate with them.
Right.
That's helpful.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, thank you for that clarifying.
We're still in charge. Okay, all right.
So just a quick thing, like on the cleaning contract, the cleaning contract, I'll talk louder so everyone can hear me.
Yep.
Talks about that, if you needed to use the fogging systems and really do a aerosol cleaning disinfecting.
Yeah, so we've established, so we've got our base contract, we've established enhanced protocol for cleaning and disinfecting, which happens every night, right? Those additional high touch points and the field house. And now I've also worked with them to develop COVID enhanced cleaning for situations where we know we have an identified case and we have protocol in place to either clean a section of the building, sections of the building, or the whole building. So
That, I'm thinking of that as a kind of, when you were talking about the distinction, that's not like a full, oh, now we're switching to remote. That's a, we need a day or 2 days to do that.
but we would do what I just described in either instance, whether we transition for a shorter period of time or a longer period of time, because we still need to disinfect the building, right? So it was important to get those protocols in place and ready to go so that we can act when we need to.
Oh, maybe just go this way.
Yeah.
Lindsay?
So I emailed both you and Mr. Delani about concerns over the demanding schedule, and you said that you'd work together with students to adapt that and change it how we feel like we need it. So how are you planning on doing that?
It's a good question, Lindsay. I'm still working on the details on that right now. But it's something we're going to look at. Mr. Belani and I talked about it actually this morning. So I don't know how the specifics are going to go with working with students on this, but we've heard you for sure. We'll probably have some kind of idea to come back and show you all of you and get some thoughts on it. I think it's probably the next step for us.
You're going places, girl. Seriously. Absolutely.
Bill?
Yeah, I was just wondering, Mike, if you could speak to the thing we had talked about earlier today, just about this notion among some subset of the community about lack of responsiveness to faculty inquiries.
Yeah, I don't know, Bill. I mean, in the fire hose of emails that I've gotten, have I missed some? Probably yes. But otherwise, really trying to get in touch with everybody that I possibly can to respond as we can. We actually spent a couple of days last week with the leadership team going through, their frequently asked questions that they've been getting from staff members and trying to put together answers to those so that they could actually, go back to their own departments and give those answers. So, it's kind of interesting that, you look at that list and there were 40-something questions on there, and I could answer about 12 of them myself. The rest of them aren't, I'm not really the one that's got that information, and so it really took getting everybody together and, questions about how do you take attendance, and everybody kind of look at me in the room, and I was like, I don't know how you take attendance here. How did you do that before this all happened, and so what, how do you want to do this going forward? So there's a lot of that discussions that are going on, and trying to get in touch with people and getting the information back to people. So
Putting them in touch with the right.
Yeah, and it's putting people in touch with the right people. So like I said, those attendance questions, probably better question for assistant principal than me. But that's what we're trying to do.
Got it. Thank you.
I just actually had a question on bus transportation. So that survey that came out, if you opted out of bus transportation, does that mean you cannot take a bus?
No.
There's enough room that if you needed to one day or...
Yeah, we have a bus coordinator, and that's Peter. So, if you have specific questions, I would suggest that you direct them directly to him. I oversee the transportation aspect of it and coordinated the contract and all the financial things and negotiated the discounts and all those kinds of things. But Pete handles the day-to-day, so he can help with the specific bus questions.
So if a family had that question, would they ask, and they were in the middle school, they would ask?
Pete.
They would ask, they would still do?
He does it for the whole.
He does it for the whole school?
Transportation for all.
But I would, in that specific example, I would suggest that they send Pete an email and copy Phil, just so Phil's aware, as a courtesy.
Okay.
And then they may need to work together. And then, of course, if there's a special element to it, then Patty and her team would need to be brought into the loop.
And I know that that's already happened in a couple of cases, and again, it's the patience, and it might take a day or two for Pete to get that coordinated.
I was just curious.
That's like
Yeah.
an alteration to a bus route, and things like that.
But in terms of that specific question, there could potentially be capacity issues, right? Because as we saw when we took our first tour, that 77 passenger bus really can only accommodate 25 non-siblings. It can accommodate more if there's siblings on the bus. So, we've done a lot of analysis around each of the 28 bus routes for each of the 2 cohorts. And we've done a lot, created seating charts and all those kinds of things. So I would encourage families to reach out if they're not riding the bus, just to see if there's a capacity issue and how we can work with them to resolve.
Pete did send us a list. There's one bus that's at 32 students, but 14 of them are siblings, so you can seat them together. So that one's may have a capacity issue. There's another bus that's right at 25.
But these numbers can change. It's very, very fluid.
I haven't heard that question, but when you were going over the information, it prompted me to ask that because someone out there may have that question.
So before I say anything, I just first want to say that we gave you guys, when we voted on the 7th, and gave you that short timeline to really pull it all together, it was really like, I felt like you were like, right under the wire on everything, and you did it. So like having that site visit that Thursday and seeing how much it put together and knowing that whole weekend was still going to be spent doing that, and that by Monday morning there'd be paper towels dusted in the classroom and fans and spray bottles and everything that everybody needed in place. So I guess I just feel like we all owe thanks to everyone at Masco for stepping up to such a high request or whatever.
Big list.
We put before you. Of course, I totally with Kasha on the idea that everything's are getting figured out, and there's so many things that you have to get in the book and you have to start doing it to have the chance to figure it out. Totally okay with the messy middle of the process. I do feel like some of the anxiety that was leading up to this, we talked before about the need for communication within our whole hospital community and with the district beyond. And I'm just wondering if now that you just mentioned, like talking when you brought the team together and we were asking who knows about how to take attendance and who knows about all the different pieces of this. I'm hoping to hear maybe in that update more about how the team of all those players that do know all those different pieces are. I just feel like this year more than ever, communication and collaboration, just talking things through a lot is so important to help everybody feel like they're part of this team and you're going to get through this together. And so hoping to hear that this might be an impetus for more of that type of communication and collaboration and shared leadership and shared decision making and feedback from the students that are trying to use their student agency and get the voices for teachers on the front lines, having a place to provide the feedback that they want. So I'm just hoping to get more about that. But I also wanted to ask you guys, I'm going to say what I've been telling people, and you can tell me if I'm explaining it right. I keep saying that, and I kind of got this from Bonnie, that this year, because no matter what, on any given day, at least half of our student population is remote, we have to stop thinking about school as a building. It's no longer building dependent. So when a lot of people ask how teachers are doing it, I keep focusing on each teacher and their specific class that they're the expert in and their specific student group of that particular class, which they have now gotten to know over the past 4.5 weeks, that it's not going to look the same in each one. And so what you guys have done is provided the tools. Someone mentioned like if you're looking at this read. One of my daughter's teachers, I think, somewhere I heard that they were projecting their screen. So the kids in the class didn't have to look down at their individual screen, they had to project it. But that might not work for a different class if they're doing breakout groups in each class. So I think everyone needs to just put a lot of trust into knowing that the connection between the teachers and the students is the most important thing right now, and all of those other things are going to get worked out as they experiment and figure it out and build with it. Am I explaining that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, they're really working hard at this, teachers, absolutely. I had a good discussion with a teacher at the beginning of the day yesterday who's been here for a long time and is frustrated to no end by this because they feel completely inadequate now that this is something so different than everything that they worked on for their careers. And teacher, it's a great example of in days past, if a kid was on his computer and I thought he was playing a game, I could just go walk up to the desk. We call it proximity move. The teacher just gets up next to this, and the student understands that the teacher's there. I'm like, hey, get back to focus. Can't do that anymore. Or how do you do that when a student's on Blackboard Connect at home? And so it's, learning how to do this, all, the things that just come naturally to teachers that they've worked on for years to get to come natural. Over 20 years, it's not the same anymore. So as I said, the best example I can have is we're all first-year teachers again. Because we're all learning this, learning the new tricks of the trade to actually do this. And that's, I think whenever anybody's had that first-year classroom experience, looks back on it, not fun, but it was a really hard, first-year teaching is really, really hard. Because you don't even know what you don't know at that point. And so that's what, it seems like with this system, that's what we're kind of throwing everybody back to that year one. And that's, like I said, that's hard. We know people are going to, all I can ask is that people try their best. Do their best and they are.
Teaching at the same time.
Yeah.
Two different roles, because they're a student themselves.
Right.
Because they're learning everything.
Right. So it's trying to do everything that you've done, Phil, as I said, for your entire career in a completely different way. I mean, think about any of your jobs. If you went into work tomorrow and somebody said, "No, you're not doing it that way anymore. You're going to do it a completely different way that you were completely unaccustomed to and not really necessarily trained for, and and you're going to make it work." It's going to be hard. You're not going to like it. You get that. It's hard.
Melissa, what were those two words?
Grace and flexibility.
Yes.
Flexibility.
Grace and flexibility. No one's expecting
No.
more than that.
Yeah.
I keep hearing, other districts, I keep hearing it's about 3 weeks, and then you're even just not as uncomfortable.
Right.
What did you say?
3 weeks.
A lot of other districts, people I know that have started hybrid, it wasn't until about week 3 that they just even felt the teachers like kind of more comfortable still working. So actually, listening to you made me think of a follow-up question. So in the remote, I feel like the PLC time, the professional learning community time, really helps teachers help each other. And I can't remember if that's part of this.
It is still, I mean, PLC time was scheduled in, and that's one of the things that was talked about, some of the administrative things that we can do. I don't want to go too much into the details, but we're looking at duties and how we can kind of maybe peel that back a little bit so that people have more time to do things like PLCs or just regular planning. And we're looking at when. It's on a whole other, still trying to figure out how we can do something like that within the confines of what we're already doing and make sure that it is fully 100% compliant with what the Department of Education will look at for time and money. Those are all the pieces that we're trying to fit into this puzzle here.
Bill, you got a quick one?
Yes. So following up on what Zilly said, have we thought about what additional support we can provide to faculty and actually to students? Thank you. Now I know why they typically seat me on the other side of the room.
I made a note of that.
But what additional support?
Yeah.
And I don't know what that might look like.
I think time is a big one at this point.
Yeah.
And how do we get people time to just, be able to work and try things out and, to plan. As I said, you're thinking about people who had their lessons kind of mapped out, at least in, some rough form, weeks in advance, and now they're doing it the night before. So, it's really kind of that time, trying to figure out how to get time to do that. I think a lot of our department heads did work on, teaching in a hybrid environment over the summer, and so, they're trying to, pass on the knowledge that they've gained to their departments as well. We definitely, nice thing is we have a professional development grant that we get from the federal government every year that came in double what it was last year. So we have the resources to do it. It just becomes that question of time. I'm sure people would love to go out and take a 3-day workshop on how to be a great hybrid teacher, but that means walking away from your classes for 3 days and trying to pick up the pieces. So,
And we probably don't want to extend the school year.
Right.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you for the great update and all of your work. All right, we're going to move on to item H, anti-racism resolution.
Yeah, I think so. So, I know we're not on a subcommittee, I think, so in leading to the resolution, can I give a little bit of a quick update? Is that all right? Yeah. Okay. So, so you guys might remember back in the summer, there were two resolutions as part of MASC that we talked about as a committee. One was for getting federally funded PPE stuff, that we have to have all this stuff in the building. We need help from the government to pay for it all. And the second was on anti-racism. And so Bonnie did a great job adapting the original MASC words to a more Masco approach. And then we as a committee, who is Bonnie, Bill, myself, we have actively Zilly and Mike, and more recently Costa, and also as a special guest star, we've had Dan Volchek returning to our committee. So we've kind of been able to dig in on it, work out wording to a very precise and present to you what we are presenting tonight. But before that is actually presented, I just wanted to say that we, as I think we've told you, we've basically been meeting weekly. But last week was a real treat because we had Jill and Megan, Jill Story and Megan Hildebrand, the department chairs for English and History department, came, and they had done a response to we're calling it the alumni letter that was presented to us this past summer about anti-racism work that needs to be done in all districts, but also including Masco. So they had presented us this letter saying, this is all the stuff that we're doing. And so we invited them back for a meeting, which was last Tuesday. Today's Wednesday, so a week and a day ago. And really had some enlightening conversation. And I think a lot of that came from their one-on-one conversations with their past students. When the students were saying, we're not necessarily learning this, and they're like, but you did. And so I think what's happening in the school can be as in-your-face direct as reading the Hate U Give book and having a discussion about the book, to more subtle skills to deal with things in life, like doing a Socratic seminar and learning to really listen and discuss things going back and forth. And so there is a lot of that going on in Masco. What's not going on in Masco is no fault of Masco's, but it's because we live in a bit of a bubble here. And so there isn't a lot of time to apply these special skills that we've learned to the real world. And what's happening, as part of colleges, kids get out there and experience a new world and a new voice and a new opportunity to stand up for new things and see justice and injustice in the world. And they're like, whoa, I didn't get any of that last week. Well, you got a lot of it, but you didn't get to practice it. And so So it was a very eye-opening, I mean, stuff we know, we've talked about, increasing diversity. But it's more than that what's needed here. So Jill and Meg were awesome because they took what our draft resolution to be and started inserting stuff that can be done, is starting to be done, and started using it as a working document for us, which is extremely helpful. So we now have that to work off of. And as a committee, we started talking about things that we could do. So we've been talking for years about ABC House, which doesn't necessarily work because they're not really active anymore, or a MECO program, or having a more diverse workforce, like for hiring, or all these big ideas that kind of are not to us. But some things we were talking about, and of course, again, it's not up to us, but we're pulling in ideas of, we've all heard now of the English teachers in 10th grade who did some pen paling with Lawrence kids. So we've talked about kind of broadening things to that extent, where could we be offering classes that both Masco kids in these Lawrence school that, this imaginary Lawrence school that we're talking about partnering with, take together, have them work on community service together. So they're not just servicing another area, but partnering with them, and the experience might go even further. So these are the things that we're discussing, and kind of started, or a spark was started by the department heads. So we really appreciate their help with us and their enlightenment and continuing working with us. And I think that that's a good summary as to where we are today. And the resolution, I believe, is linked in here. And so hope everybody has had time to memorize it. And you'll be quizzed on it next. But we're happy to talk about it and hear if anybody has any questions, concerns, comments. Hurrahs, that doesn't start with a C, whatever. We can go from there. But what we would like to do is to pass it as accepted by our committee for our school. And then we would pass it on to MAC, who still is trying to work on a statement for the state, of which ours is going to be different than everybody else's, but too bad ours is going to be different. And I think my computer died, so I can't pull it up. I know it's like to be for the school.
I like that ours is different. I love that ours is different. And
it should be.
Like the changes that you made to the original one. I'm hoping that maybe this goes on our website too, under school committee among other areas, I guess.
We can put it everywhere.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to ask Jeff to make like 10,000 copies and put it up all on every single wall.
But I also like how you are thinking of the action plan behind it, because that's something we talked about at the beginning. It's easy to say words. It's much harder to actually do things. So I love that that's the approach.
And also we know what's our responsibility and what's not. So, we would like to say, hey, administration, can you please do that? We also know that obviously this is essential, important stuff. It is really hard right now to, be concentrating and all, but we also know we don't want the ball to drop on it. So it's definitely a balancing point.
Yeah, if I could just add one thing, now might be a uniquely good time to do some things with other schools, since we're all doing things, through Wi-Fi. That it's not a matter of having to get on a bus and go somewhere. So for some things, timing may be pretty good right now.
And we at least have those tools for us in the much more cemented in the future. conspiracy meetings. Does anybody was on it?
Well, I really want to make the motion.
Ready?
To accept the anti-racism resolution.
I'll second it.
Tasha seconding. Any more discussion? All right, all in favor of approving, please raise your hand. All right, unanimous approval. Thank you for your hard work. I know that people
Yeah. And if anybody else wants to join in, we're kind of fun on Mondays at 1, but maybe changing to 2.
If we're letting Dan hang around, we, certainly.
We'll let anybody?
We'll let anybody.
Yeah, we're rearranging the time, but I just haven't had to get there yet.
All right, thank you, Tasha. Next up is school committee responsibilities and protocols. Jackie reminded me that we haven't done our annual renewal of signing off on our school committee protocols. They were attached to the agenda, along with a couple policies that I think touch upon what our duties are and what they aren't. So the protocols are the same. I haven't changed anything. As last year, I think Terry is the only new member. We did spend some time on putting these together last year that Bill remembers.
They were.
I mean, if you have any comments, please let us know.
No, but you're not allowed to because we spent a lot of time.
We're done.
You don't want all my red lining, no? Red marking, whatever.
So there are 4
Red
parts:
lining.
how we govern, how we treat each other, how we communicate, and what are our responsibilities. And I just want to take a minute to read one of those. There's superintendent's responsibility to oversee personnel issues and to manage the day-to-day operations of the district. It is the school committee's responsibility to evaluate the superintendent's effectiveness in these matters. So I kind of see that one as kind of outlining our lanes that we're supposed to be in. We've talked a little bit about how the lines between those lanes have gotten a little blurry during this COVID time. I mean, there's a reason for that. This is unknown territory and everyone is anxious. It's a super tough time for everybody, teachers, students, parents, administration, and I think we've done a good job being patient with each other. But I guess I just want to talk about the latest area where I see there's been some temptation to swerve out of our kind of lane, and it's one example is with regard to the daily hybrid schedule that we're in right now. So we are definitely responsible for the overall education of Masco students. I think we all know that, but we get there through our policies and through our oversight of basically. We don't get there by drawing up our own schedules and discussing. So I guess that's just one thing I want to talk about. I mean, I know it's usually good intentions. There are an infinite number of ways that schedule could be run, but there's a lot of practical things. And we have very qualified people that we hire to do that. So what I do see, like in this particular area, like what our role is, like it's 3 things. So sometimes we might hear from teachers with their questions and concerns. We need to encourage them to go directly to their department heads with those. It's not that we don't think they're valid, but that's not the way things work. And we should encourage the department heads to the extent we hear from them, that they need to let their concerns be known to their administration. I'm just talking about the chain of command. But I think it's very important, and I don't see any, like we talked about, like this is a good time to look at like a new anti-racism type of curriculum. This is a good time to look at changes because everything's so different now. This is a good time for teachers to speak up and feel comfortable doing stuff because I feel there's zero downside. And I hope they know that. And then the second thing is in each of our meetings, we will continue to get updates. We'll continue to ask for them and make sure they're on the agenda from the principals, just like we did today, and from Mike and Jeff and Patty. And I liked how Bill today told us this is what's working, this is what's not. Costa's favorite question, like what's not working, please tell us.
That's the only way we can help provide the guidance, the resources to make things better. If we never hear about what's not working, how can we help to make things better?
Right. So we want to hear about that. I think we've made it clear, and I think that we're getting a lot of good feedback from everybody. And we expect those updates to be informed by the teachers speaking up to the department heads and everybody talking to each other, like some of the stuff Silly alluded to. So if there are examples of that going on, we'd love to hear more about that. And then the third one is eventually Mike will give us his ultimate assessment after this thing has kind of, like we talked about, settled for the appropriate amount of time. And he's had time to talk to all the stakeholders and do this one. And he'll let us know what that does. So it's, I guess I'm just saying, like, in the meantime, let's leave it to the experts to do their work. That's my little spiel. For tonight, I'm going to send around the protocols to be signed, and then while I do that, any questions? Melissa.
I actually do have a question, because something that you said is, I know that the teachers I appreciate, as a policymaker, hearing all the voices that are involved, and I understand there's a chain of command, and I don't think it's our position to respond to things that everything that we hear. However, I think, like, it's important for us to hear them. So if we are not, I think as someone who's going to make a decision about a policy that's happening in a school, I want to hear the teacher voices, I want to hear the student voices, and I want to hear the administrative voices. So how can we accomplish, and I think that's part of I think it's part of our duty. I think it's actually stated that we have to listen to our community in one of the policies. It's embedded in there.
Yeah.
So I guess my concern is, how can we hear those voices? And if it's hearing from the department heads, I'd like to do so more often.
Right.
But I'd also actually like to hear from actual teacher voices. So just my 2 cents.
We did. I had none scheduled.
We also, I mean, back in Middleton Elementary, they always had staff members come to the school committee meetings. I don't know if we can do that, if they're allowed in the building. And, I mean, I guess we're hearing letters, but I think it's a two-way communication, so it's I don't know.
The union of Oxford always had representatives at our meetings.
Like it was a union rep.
There were several, yeah, but they did participate. Yeah,
Yeah, I do remember that.
yeah.
I hope that it didn't sound like I was saying that I don't want to hear meetings. What I don't want to happen is, as we listen to them, that we try to solve their problems. Sorry. I didn't mean to indicate that we don't want to hear from teachers. What I was trying to say is, as we do, we need to encourage them to share their concerns with everybody and not just school committee. But that is a very good point, because right now, that hearing from them directly in department heads is missing in the process, and I kind of understand why that's the case right now. Maybe it's something you can think about. And then maybe they show up in school every once in a while for an update, or.
Yeah, I definitely agree that it's inappropriate for school committee members to have resolved problems. But it's sometimes helpful in policy making to hear.
I totally get it. Anybody else?
Also just a year of complaining. I mean, that's like it's not normal, so there's a lot to be concerned about. I don't want to say complaining like it's a light thing, but It's not what anybody wants. So this is like, it's such an unusual year. We've never had this situation before because we haven't really been presented with a challenge like this, so.
Yeah.
We will all go strong together.
Thank you.
I like the protocols and governance. I think it's really nice that you have this and that it obviously represents a lot of work. So I'm happy to not raise any concerns about it.
Okay, subcommittee reports. Melissa, speaking of policy.
Oh, yes. So, our first policy is we presented the anti-discrimination policy at the last meeting, which was the first read. And I apologize, I have to download it because it's not working. And this is the second read, and I don't know if I actually even explained because it was a really late time at our last meeting, but there were changes that Mike went to special counsel with, changes to the policy due to statutory changes. And then at the suggestion of Costa, we took the Masco language and we included it. Terry and I have met a fair number of times with Mike, and we all agreed that and those are the second paragraph with the bullets, or what I call the Masco language, just what our commitment is to combat discrimination. So we combined the required language with the Masco policy, and that's the results is this. So just looking to see if anyone has questions or feedback, typographical errors, things of that nature. Otherwise, we'll ask to
I'll move to accept the non-discrimination MRSD policy.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. One more?
Yes, so if everyone will recall, last year, we started the process of sort of talking about MASC, doing a policy review, and then possibly hosting the storage of our policies, because if anyone's ever tried to look at them or pull them, it's nearly impossible to search them. You have to pull them up individually. It's really difficult. There's a number of policies within our policy book that say the same thing over and over and over and over. And I have a tendency to think that that's probably how the MASC policies are. But Terry took the lead and contacted MASC, and I'm going to let her take over and discuss that.
Sure. So you'll see a link to a document that's just a brief overview. I think that we would just kind of get this out there tonight, just get it on the table, and then really discuss it at the next meeting. But the idea would be, and I just should acknowledge, I know there's a lot of institutional memory in the room. I have the least of it, so others will know more about the history, but it seems to me, having talked to Mike and Melissa and looked at the policies, they're sort of, it's been reviewed piecemeal. It seems like there was probably an effort maybe 5 years ago to review a number of policies, and as you can see, it's sort of like a movable feast. We always have to review them. In TTU, I was not responsible for doing it, but we did do this last year with MASC. It's a lot of work, but I think it was really worth it, because what you end up with is a brand new set, unified policies that are in line with the educational mission and the latest legislation, et cetera. I just did a random sampling of our policies, and a lot of them date back to the early 70s, which must have been when the school was established. They were reviewed in 2009. Some were reviewed in 2015, and then if you just start poking around, you can see They were tagged for review at some point. Some were tagged for review like 2018, 2019, 2020, and they haven't, been reviewed. So I called it MASC, and they have this service, which you've probably heard about before. So it's policy review service. And what they do is sit down with representatives from the committee and go through every policy. So I think there are like 400. It takes about a year if you're diligent about it, according to the rep. It's like 2 hours a month going through policy by policy, and then the committee would be bringing forward to the full committee, the subcommittee would be bringing forward for review every policy. The price for this right now is $10,500. However, I didn't mean to bargain, but I did somehow.
Sure as hell did.
I know. I don't know quite how I did that, but I misunderstood what TTU paid. So anyway,
I think she needs to be.
I got to respond back. I mean, I don't want to. This organization does a lot of good work, so I don't want to, rip them off. But they would do this for us for $5,000. It's billable over 3 years. It doesn't matter how long it takes. We could still do it over 3 years if we want to. And the last part I would mention just tonight is that they do, like Melissa said, they have this Policy 21 hosting service. There are 91 districts in the state that are using it now. So they host it so it's searchable, publicly accessible to everyone, and then the updates as they come through, like these ones that we're reviewing now, they prompt us when to make them, we review, and then they update the document online. Right now that's an annual fee. It's $950 right now, but we would have to talk about it. Maybe I'll get it for $425. Just kidding. No, I think so. So, I mean, I, as a newcomer, feel like this would be a really good. I feel tired right now, so I'm like, what were we thinking? Why did we suggest this? But I think to me, it seems like a good idea. And I know Melissa and Mike agree with that. So I guess we could take maybe a couple questions now and then vote on it next time.
I don't remember how it ended. I know we had a lot of conversation about it, and then it just kind of fell off the, I don't know, maybe.
I think the pandemic.
Yeah, I think
that there's no reason not to, is my.
Kristen, did you have?
I was just going to say that I think the policy committee from last year was recommending this approach, and I think that as a committee, we had sort of, while not voting, agreed on the hosting part for sure, and we were just sort of, there were a few people going back and forth over the value of using the service, and I think that Dan suspected that this had been done, yet we had found in our research no evidence of that, and I know that we felt last year that this was the best way to get all of these policies looked at in an efficient and timely fashion. So I don't know. I would certainly not vote against it.
I'll move that we use mass
for
the policy review and the hosting service.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Can I be further developed?
Yeah, well, I don't know.
You're the chair.
That's right. So I'm one of the old timers on the school committee. I totally support hosting it. Yeah, I think Kevin actually was like our hoster when he was superintendent. It's kind of crazy, and it's even.
He had his own system.
Yeah. And I have warmed up to having Mass come in and help with it, especially because of all the other work that we have.
And they cut the price in half.
Yeah, well.
That was the price. Originally, they quoted us.
Yeah, I think that's how it happened. I said.
That must have been before my time. The 10.5 is what I remember from last year.
But what I was hesitant about was I don't want to lose, if there's anything in there, I'm not sure, but the Masco-ization of the policies, which when I was on the policy subcommittee, that's what I thought our role was, because I would look at the Mass policy, I would look at ours, and I'd be like, okay, who's better? And then we kind of come to what we liked. If they're going to be, if you're sitting down with them while they're doing it, and there's like redlining involved, so we can see what the changes are, then
That's how, Mike said he's been through it before too. That's what they did with TTU.
2 hours.
Dorothy
Presser comes in with masks, and the masks go current, and says, what do you want to do?
Yeah, okay. I mean, it basically gives you the discipline to get it.
Right.
Yeah, it's like a structured
We
approach.
still have to approve every
Right.
And then, yeah,
single
they
change.
still have to come for first and second reading for us.
Yeah, with the new superintendent, it seems like a good time to do it, so.
All right, yeah,
All right,
let us
so-
know if you think you can do it in a year.
I don't know, that's what she said, I might, you know, Melissa and I might flip to regret it. I don't- See, we may need more than 2 people, I don't know, but we'll find out.
Well, it's a calendar year anyway.
It's, yeah.
All right, I think we need to vote. All in favor of this? It's unanimous? Thank you for picking that up again.
And that's for both services, correct? We voted on.
Yes.
So, yes,
Okay.
thank you. All right, is there anything else, Melissa, for
No.
policy?
Oh, our next meeting is going to be, November
You want to get back to us on that?
November 3rd at 1:30.
All right,
Election day.
thank you. All right, Bonnie, do you want to give a community engagement?
Yes, thank you. All right, just a little going back, so this year with community relations, Joe and Bill and I, we've met 10 times since August 24th, including a community forum and 2 listening sessions. So the community forum, as you guys know, was when we had the Masco experts, the staff from Masco available for that evening. We had 430 people attend, and they answered people's questions that we had sort of cultivated from pre-submitted questions and live questions. The listening sessions are very different, and they have more. We've done 2 so far. We did one on October 5th and then one on October 13th. The community forum was right before the transition to remote, or the start to remote. The first listening session was right before our decision about hybrid on October 7th. And then the following listening session was after the decision to go hybrid, just before actually beginning hybrid. In the listening session, it's been kind of free form, where community members can ask a question, the school committee members are listening, doing their best to answer what they can or direct as they can, refer to the chain of command or whatever action we can offer. So, and I want to also say huge thanks to everyone who has participated, those of you on the committee who have come to the listening session to be listening, and to all of the community members who have participated, and the Masco staff that has participated as well. So great, it's been a great start, lots of learning. I'd like to put the question out now, what if you guys have any thoughts and feedback on especially the listening sessions, tweaks that you see might be a good idea, and perhaps where this conversation fits into our earlier conversation about roles and responsibilities, and just the best way for us all to be, improving understanding. The goal of the committee is to help the community better understand Masco, and Masco to better understand the community. There's lots of gray area that we're, trying to navigate and make sure that we're, not in the middle of. We're not trying to solve it, but just, having that dialogue and doing that listening. But I don't necessarily have the answer to how to do that, so I'm curious what you guys think.
I was really impressed by what you did. I mean, it was highly organized, and I thought, sort of surveying people for questions, putting them in categories and having them posed by someone on the committee was a really smart way to do it, because it could have been a free-for-all.
For the forum.
Yeah, for the forum. And the listening session, I think the danger that we always have is that, everyone has their opinion and everyone wants to voice it. And I think, maybe highlighting what we just talked about the role of the committee versus the role of the administration, would be is always helpful, but I just want to thank you for the hard work because your committee really, as a parent, I would say those sessions were really helpful.
Good. I don't know who. Okay, Melissa.
I think that you did a tremendous job, the community relations subcommittee, on the listening sessions. And I think as long as you make it clear at the beginning of each session that you're there to listen, and aren't necessarily able to respond. Again, I said this before, I think it's really important that we hear the concerns of the community, even if we cannot respond to them, but we can direct them to where they need to go. Or not necessarily respond to the listening comments, but if we hear something, we can say something and we can respond appropriately.
I can just add something. I think our whole, or one of our reasons for doing it was that if you've been in one of these school committee meetings long enough, you've experienced that uncomfortableness when a member of the public makes some statement or asks a question and we move on to the next agenda item. So not wanting to make these meetings any longer, we felt that it was let's give this a try if we can offload some of that to this session, and because there's often fewer participants, but not always, it could be managed and engaged a little bit, maybe ask a follow-up question, and it's slightly less formal. And we figured let's give it a try. And like everything else, let's see what works and see what doesn't work, and let's make it better. And if it turns out into a bad thing, then we might think differently. But my impression is so far so good. Maybe they're a little clunky and messy, and that's okay. These are clunky and messy times. So I think it's been useful, and when we feel differently, you'll be the first to know.
Kristen?
Yeah, I guess the only other thing I would add is that I think the key component to the listening sessions is partly due to the less formal situation, but I think that we've seen that staff are much more comfortable speaking up and sharing their thoughts, and I think the parents feel like they're being heard because it's a remote setting, but somebody's looking and listening, unlike what we have with our current open comments section. So I think that it just lends itself well to the community knowing that we're truly engaged. Otherwise, there's that wall of the computer screen where you don't know how much engagement you have from the person you're speaking to. So I think it lends credence to our process in our decision making. They at least know that their voices have been heard in a way that maybe makes them feel better about raising their voice. And I think for staff, again, I'm big on collaboration, and I think it's really critical to know how all aspects of the not building are feeling. It's just as important to have your pulse on the students and the administration and the community and the faculty to help us guide our decisions. It may not be that they're directly influencing us with their statements, but for me to know in my gut that when I'm making a decision, I'm making the right decision based on all of the factors, having that engagement session just to sit and listen is really vital to my decision-making process.
I just would be really curious, I don't know how you guys are, if you had thought about doing more in the pace, but I think it would be really interesting to do another one in a month and to see, I feel like that population, it may decrease, but, you know, to me, that's when people can actually have valid feedback on how it's been going. Because they've given it, like, each week has had at least twice. You know, you've had your A week twice, you've had your B week twice, and see what people are thinking about. But I agree with everybody else that, you know, our goal as a school committee was to have better community relations by doing outreach, and what better way than that?
I
Thank you.
agree. I think it sounds like everybody agrees that they do great. I like Tasha's idea of doing it in a month. I wouldn't do them. I know why we had all of those. Things were changing so quickly and there were so many questions and we couldn't get the information out fast enough and had to repeat it. But I think monthly, or, you know, depending on what the next legislative issue is probably a good way. And as a subcommittee, it seems like you're also trying to tack on to that, like also achieving other things, which I commend you. I commend you on meeting 10 times since August.
I had no idea it was that
That's a
committee.
record, yeah.
Really?
You have to count the forum.
Yeah. So, I don't know, like, is the school committee gonna do that for the next 5 years? That I don't know, so you might wanna put up some more sustainable type of things so that expectations don't unless you wanna do it for your full term on the school committee, but that's just a thought. And then maybe you do alternating, which I think you suggested, Bonnie. One of your meetings is a listening session, one of your meetings is just talking about other items. And my other one is it should be dinner with the school committee so that we can eat with our screens on. I mentioned that at your last one because it's dinner time and I had to keep shutting this down.
Yeah, so, oh, sorry.
Costa has
Go ahead, Costa.
Yeah, so far, you know, the listening sessions have really been about the school community because, you know, of the issues of, you know, hybrid, remote, etc. You know, when we get it into issues that might be of interest and concern to the greater community, the listening sessions, I think, could be, I'd be fascinated to know if, well, like for instance, when we're talking about the budget, if the listening sessions, you know, lead to more, you know, input from members of the community that do not have kids in the district. Because, you know, the greater community is paying for Masco to function. And, you know, if those, that could be, for me, another key addition to and benefit of these listening sessions. If, you know, those lead to more input. Because right now we have our budget hearing, which 3 or 4 people come to, make basically no comments. And so if these listening sessions lead to more input, that'd be great.
You should start marketing that, like when they come to talk about that. Bonnie, anything else?
Just a quick, what I've been doing so far with the listening sessions is afterwards I've been kind of trying to compile, can you hear me okay? Like I've been compiling like a takeaways, just kind of a summary of like what was talked about, and then I'm sending it to the executive team. Does that seem like a good process? And then that way, I mean, in the last one, it was sort of filling the hole of what we thought was going to be a community forum where there was going to be more answers, you know, and then we had all the answers from the school committee meeting, and so we kind of, it was a little bit different, but if that still makes sense as far as it's not, I guess what I'm kind of trying to make sure I'm clear on is making, you know, so if someone says something that's not our area, we help them know who they should talk to, the correct chain of command. And then in addition, we're also kind of sharing so that you know, so that everybody knows what was shared with the school committee to some degree.
I think that's.
And then it's there.
Really good. Do you think, so you've been sharing it with the team, should it be other people who, I mean, a lot of us have made it through most of those, but.
Yeah, so maybe it should be, yeah, so afterwards, I'll just do a summary. Should I be waiting for the next school committee meeting or just send it to everyone after? Just email it to everyone?
Because you guys are on.
It runs.
Email. Yeah, you know the internal one? Yeah.
Yeah,
School committee
okay.
address.
Because I haven't
Just no
been.
talking about it.
Right, you can send it to the.
Oh, that's all, just a FYI.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
So like you said, what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to get beyond just talking about the listening sessions and the community forum, because we do have other things on the agenda. So what we're thinking of doing now is on the opposite Wednesday from the school committee. So like so next Wednesday, October 28th, we'll have a meeting without a listening session where we can start talking about more long-term things. And Mike's going to be able to be there, and we can be talking about potentially community organizations like Tri-Town Council, possibly working with other subcommittees, like how do we facilitate something with the anti-racism subcommittee, and think other conversations about news articles, magazine. We have things on the agenda. So. And those meetings are public, but then we would try to shoot for having the listening sessions on the Monday, maybe not every Monday, prior to a school committee meeting. So that way then the agenda is out that morning, people know what's on the agenda. It is kind of helping to pull from that public comments, type voice. And then we can talk about if we want to be. It sounds like maybe we don't want to do that for every meeting. Is that what I'm kind of hearing?
I think every other week would be really, I know there'll not only a lot of work, but
okay.
Personally, I at least my opinion is that you should wait for this next one. Let people try it out.
Yeah, okay.
Otherwise.
Yeah, so we can maybe kind of communicate about a meeting that we think it will be especially good to have some listening before.
I mean, I think there's enough gaps between the school committee meetings that we ought to be able to get a heads up about that and schedule, a listening session, or if we think it would be helpful.
Okay.
All right, there's at least 2 weeks, and sometimes 3 between school committee meetings.
Well, like November 18th is our next school committee meeting after 4 weeks of classes. So you could do like November 16th.
Don't we meet on the 4th?
Yeah, but
that would be 4 weeks of
Oh, okay,
classes.
yeah, sorry.
If you wanted to do that.
So do a listening session on the 16th, November 16th?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's put that in the calendar, and then for the regular community relations meeting, we'll meet on the October 28th, this upcoming, a week from today, and start kind of planning that.
It's also a great model to have in place for the next time something big comes up, like if, say, start time comes up again, then you have for example, then you have a model.
Yes, it should, Terry.
That's a great idea.
You made me laugh with my mask when I was. That's not good.
It gets messy.
I know.
Okay, thank you everyone, thank you again for all of the involvement.
Thanks for your hard work.
All right, the consent agenda. Number 1, approval of the October 7th, 2020 meeting minutes, and number 2 is payments of $1,659,161.55. 9 of them signed since October 7th, 2020.
Actually had a question about the minutes. I'm not sure who has it up, but under item J, the sentence that starts on page 2 and goes to page 3 that reads, grant money has been received to cover the expenses of the leaves. That was not my understanding.
No grant money has been received and it will not be used to cover these.
Right.
The last.
It starts on page 2 and goes to 3.
The last 4 words on page 2.
Good catch, Bill.
The last 4 words, page 2.
Maybe that was wishful
Very
thinking.
bottom. It says grant money has been.
It's highlighted on my copy, you're welcome to it.
Item J. Yeah, first paragraph, well,
Last page. Oh,
in the middle,
yeah,
in the
right.
middle of it. These accommodations were made to October 16th. Right after that.
Right after that, grant money has been received to cover the expenses. I said something like that, but that's not what I said.
Can you do me a favor? Can you email me these changes before the meeting? So I can make them?
Oh, next time.
I brought it up because I wanted to be sure that I had missed something.
All right, so,
But going forward, if it's like a little
Yeah,
logistical issue,
absolutely.
Lynn, like you would prefer to hear about it before the meeting, is that,
So I can have it done then, right?
okay.
Absolutely.
even if it's a question, you can copy Mike and me and we can like resolve it at the meeting.
In my defense, I probably caught this at about 5 o'clock.
That's totally fine.
I make a motion to accept as amended.
Okay, thank you, Josh. I second that. All those in favor?
Sorry.
Unanimous? Okay, thank you. And,
A motion to adjourn.
oh, I guess the warrants, we gotta do the warrants separate. I second that. All those in favor? I have one real quick thing. I asked Jackie to, on the website, under our names, to put our term of service on there. So could you take a look at it, because you're the only ones that really know what you're doing. Thank you. All right.
Thanks.
I move to adjourn.
Adjourn, second. All in favor? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.